So the reason I brought this presentation over here is to give you an idea that when you are putting your slides together, do not put details on the slide. Rather, put your details in the notes section and only list the bullet points and talk about those bullet points one by one. The other mistake people make is they just load the slide with bullet points. Like, for example, they will have like tons of bullet points on the slide. Don't do that. That makes your slide like an essay. Don't do that. Keep it simple, keep it to the point, and that gets people going. Okay? So whatever is it that you pick, that is what you have to keep in mind. Any questions though about this? Everybody good? Okay. Okay, let's see who arrived in the meanwhile. So we have Victor joining us. Okay, cool. The other thing I want to bring to your attention is if you go to Blackboard, and you go under the presentation link, in the presentation link under presentation number 1, it tells you that it's 5 to 7 minutes presentation. Let me remove the in-class word from there. 5 to 7 minutes presentation on the topic of your choice. I already told you about that. This presentation will be during class time. So the last 1 hour of our class time will be dedicated to those 3 people who will come forward and present. Here is the schedule for presentation. So here's an Excel sheet link. Go ahead and click on it and open it. And let me explain how to read this. So each one of you, I just picked you guys from the grade book in the same order as your last name. So these 3 people, Aiden, Nathan, and Ismail, will be going next week, February 2nd. And Jonathan and Arali are standby for February 2nd. In case if any one of these 3 people are a no-show, then we will have somebody else to go in place of that. And the people who are a no-show will go next week. So every week we have standby. So 5 people should be ready to go next week. If Arali and Jonathan do not get a chance to go on the 2nd, because all 3 people whose turn was there on the 2nd, well, they will go on 9th. And likewise, the whole thing is scheduled. Okay?
So we're just giving like information about a topic that we like?
You are presenting the topic, not giving information. Your presentation day is February 2nd if you are Aiden, Nathan, or Ismail, which is next week.
Okay. Yeah, I know. Well, I wasn't here last week, so
Okay.
I'm just kind of lost as to what exactly we're doing.
Oh, okay. Okay. Yes. So you probably did not watch the lecture video also.
I didn't get a chance to.
Yeah. So when you do that, you will have a better idea. And what I did when we talked about presentations in last class, I took those 20 minutes clip out of the class and made a short video, which included presentation tips for students. So make sure when you are preparing, you can go over that as a refresher so that you don't have to sit through and try to figure out where we spoke about that last week. So that link is also available to you right here. Anyway, so we talked about one of the biggest challenges people face when they're asked to talk about something they like, they do not know when to stop. And that challenge you need to overcome by limiting yourself on the slides. Prep yourself ahead of time that whatever you have put together is deliverable in 5 to 7 minutes. Don't go overboard. Don't go underboard. If you are telling information, people should be listening to you. Okay, so that's something to keep in mind. Okay, so we will now open the textbook and we will go to chapter number 2, unit number 1, chapter number 2. As I told you guys last week, that the book itself is divided into 5 phases, and we are currently on phase number 1. Last week's chapter was about the role of a systems analyst and what systems analyst does, how somebody can become a system analyst in terms of what skills to gain, what are some things systems analyst does on day-to-day basis. So now we are diving into analyzing the business case. Analyzing the business case. What exactly is a business case? We will talk about that inside the chapter. But initially, we'll start out with describing the strategic planning process, then looking at SWOT analysis, which stands for strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. SWOT. Then we'll be looking at the concept of a business case. Then we will look at the 6 main reasons for systems request, the 2 factors affecting systems project, and how system requests are processed, and explaining how system request feasibility is assessed, explaining how requests are prioritized, and conducting a preliminary investigation. Okay, so starting out with the strategic planning. Strategic planning is the process of identifying long-term organizational goals, strategies, and resources. Who decides companies' long-term goals?
The CEO or COO?
The upper management, right? The upper management decides the strategic goals, the long-term goals, and middle management has the short-term goals, and the lowest level has operational goals. So strategic plan basically looks at more than what your day-to-day operations are in the light of your mission and vision. So any and every project that comes in has to meet that mission and vision. The managers have to prepare for long-range needs, such as new data warehouses or other kind of issues or problems business may face or is facing, and accordingly, the problem will be dealt with. Now comes SWOT, which is strength, weakness, opportunities, and threat. So strategic planning, which starts with the mission statement, which includes company's vision, company's purpose, and company's values. So in the planning process, you have to keep in mind, what is the company's mission? And another concept over here is a critical success factor, which pretty much means that is one that must be achieved to fulfill the company's mission. That is something that you have to achieve. You cannot deviate from that. That must be the core of your strategic planning, not to deviate from the critical success factor. Okay. Objectives also might include tactical plans, such as creating a new website and training a special customer support group to answer email inquiries. Finally, the objectives translate into day-to-day business operations, supported by IT and other corporate resources. Moving forward, SWOT analysis. Strength, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. So anytime something comes along, you need to analyze it. And during the analysis process, these four things are considered. What are our strengths and how can we use them to achieve our business goals? What are our weaknesses and how can we reduce or eliminate them? What are our opportunities and how do we plan to take advantage of them? And what are our threats and how can we assess, manage, and respond to the possible risks? Four things to keep in mind on all of these actions that we may take. Have a look at this problem statement. A SWOT analysis might produce results similar to those shown here. Strengths: excellent web design staff, low systems analyst turnover, recently upgraded network. Weaknesses: still using several legacy systems. Budget increase was turned down. Documentation needs updating. Opportunities: well-positioned for expansion, can be first with new software, high potential for a B2B growth. And threats: aggressive new web competition, impact of new FCC rules, other firms offer better benefits. So that is a fear factor that I may lose some good employees if they can find better employment elsewhere. There is a threat always there. Now, let's think about some of the business models that you guys have seen in your lifetime. You guys might have heard of a company that used to exist called Blockbuster.
I
Right?
used to work there.
Yep, Blockbuster, the video rental store.
Exactly. Who was the biggest competitor of Blockbuster in 90s?
Probably some like Family Video.
That is local.
Is it? Damn. I see them all over Wisconsin and Illinois, I guess, yeah.
Yeah. There used to be somebody called Hollywood Movies.
Oh, geez, I forgot about them until you just said that.
Yes. They were big. But they were first to go when Netflix came about. And everybody was like, Netflix will fail because who would want to get only 2 movies in mail? But their deals were such that people could not deny it. Plus the convenience, we were slowly and gradually getting into convenience mode with internet, even though internet speeds were not that fast. So streaming services were not around, but I don't know how they managed the cost, but they were giving you 2 DVDs when you return 2 DVDs, and they let you maintain your list on the internet, and they will just maintain and keep sending stuff to you according to your list. And they had different plan. Of course, they had to do some costing. So yeah, it was like, wow. And yeah, go ahead.
Probably a lot of that is because they didn't have to have all these brick and mortar stores. They could just have these distribution centers and have just people sending things out all day.
Probably, yeah, you're right. Absolutely, absolutely. But the number of copies to keep and all of that stuff is just like, they had good system in place, let me put it this way. And then at the same time, you have to be quick in delivery. And this is before there was a massive competition in who can deliver faster. These are before those times. So yeah, they survived, and Blockbuster tried to replicate their model, but couldn't do it as effectively. So as a result, they were gone. Plus their movies were like 4 times more expensive than Netflix. So I don't know. It's just like, different threats enter the market. There's always a threat of a competitor coming into the market and taking the market share more than you do, or maybe putting you out of business. That fear is always there. For example, hospital systems, right? Aurora was not this big. But over the period of time, it grew and it took over so many local small doctor practices. They all became Aurora clinics, and they all became Aurora employees. And then Aurora was bought by who? Who bought Aurora Hospital System? That it is now even bigger than when it was just Aurora.
Oh boy.
Advocate,
I quit them, so I can't remember.
advocate.
Advocate, yeah,
Yes,
that's right.
Advocate Aurora is now the new name. Similarly, St. Catherine's. St. Catherine's was bought by Freighter South, or Freighter, so it became Freighter South. So things of that nature, you know, there are always threats entering into the market. Always there are opportunities to go for weaknesses, strengths are always there. So you have to just look at what you have and work with it. Here's another example, the SWOT analysis here that our patent covers valuable technology that we can use in popular products. So we don't have to worry about it because we got a good thing going on there. However, there's a weakness that it has a limited life. Eventually it will expire and it will not be protected anymore. But then there is an opportunity that we can use this technology in more of our products and we can upsell them or whatever. And there's always a threat that there may be a competitor entering into the market with similar technology that does not legally infringe our patent. Okay. You guys might have heard about this, that Apple had to stop selling all its watches in America recently. The Apple 9 series.
No, missed that.
I heard something about it. I haven't looked into it though.
Yeah, because there was this local company that said, you know, Apple took their technology in calculating some health system values. It was actually their technology or something like that. And they were never given credit for that or some, there was like, I didn't read the full article, but something like that was happening since I don't own one. So I didn't bother reading about it. So yeah, so they had, I don't know if it resumed sales or not, but I think they are, hold on a second. Okay, here it says the Apple Watch Series 9 and Ultra Watch 2 were both banned in the US late last year as a result of a patent dispute with medical device maker Masimo. So that came about on January 18th, 2024. I don't know if it's still banned or not, but that's, you
The-
know,
They'll probably have to go ahead and go through a long court battle to get any sort of resolution to it.
probably. The role of the IT department in this whole process, the systems analyst should be interested in strategic planning because it reflects a higher level of involvement in supporting. So whatever comes forth, it at the end of the day, it is the IT who has to support this, so must very well be involved with it, aware of it, and should work on it. The project supports overall business strategy is one thing that must be kept in mind. The project scope must be very well defined. It is something that is achievable, something that is realistic, should not act like that European king who tried to build the best ship. And in order to do so, he started following whatever every other king was doing. And at the end of the day, his ship was the first to go down because the initial plan was not to support all these additional items on top. So must always avoid scope creep. Scope creep must be avoided. Strategic planning tools. Irrespective of the development strategy used, many organizations still rely on the IT groups to provide guidance when they have to select a tool. Some analytics stick to traditional text-based methods like using Microsoft Word tables to provide structure and clarity. Some people use Excel. Some people may invest in hefty apps. A more sophisticated approach is to use a case tool to define and document the overall environment. So there are many things that can be used to do your strategic planning. Now comes the business case. During the systems planning phase, the IT team reviews a request to determine if it presents a strong business case. And what exactly is a business case? It refers to the reasons or justification for a proposal. Now let's backtrack from here. Okay, the business case is inclusive of the reasoning or justification as to why I want to do this. That means business case is solving a problem. Business case is pretty much a document that says there is a problem and we need to solve it. What is the definition of a problem in IT? So what is the definition of problem in IT? So when somebody says we're solving a problem, what comes to your mind?
Bugs.
Bugs. Okay. Okay. Anybody else has a different answer? Than bugs? So all of you probably are on the same page with Greg, that it is something that is giving you trouble. That's what a problem is. In IT, problem is not just a bug. It's one of the three things. Either it's really a pain in the neck. It's really a bug. It's really a problem that you use like the word problem for. Something is not working. We need to fix it. That's one definition of problem. Another definition of problem in IT is an improvement. Third definition of problem in IT is it is an idea that we want to execute. It will be helpful in the future. We don't need it. It's not an improvement on the current system, but it will help us in the future. It's more of a futuristic approach. All of these three things are regarded in the business cases as problems to be solved. The bottom line is, why are we doing this project? What is the project about? How does the solution address key business issues? How much will it cost and how long will it take? Will we suffer a productivity loss during the transition? What is the return on investment and the payback period? What are the risks of doing the project? How will we measure success? And what alternatives exist? These are all different questions that must be addressed in this. Then comes the systems request. A starting point for most information system projects is called a system request, that you want to initiate the request. And what do the companies do? Since there are so many requests coming in, they create a system for you to enter your requests. In some cases, they will provide you with a form to fill out. In that case, you will be filling out the form with what you want to do and all of that stuff. But here in figure 2-4, it shows the 6 main reasons for systems requests are stronger controls, reduced cost, more information, better performance, improved service to customers, and more support for new products and services. These 6 items are mostly the driving factors behind the business cases. Stronger control. So you probably may need to put in place some kind of an encryption algorithm or multi-factor authentication authorization process, maybe a single sign-on, maybe a biometric device, some kind of a better control. Or you want to take measures to reduce cost. We are spending too much money with so-and-so vendor, and next year the vendor is planning on increasing the price by 20%, which may go outside of our budget. What can we do to tackle this problem? Maybe either seek a different vendor or negotiate the cost, or maybe negotiate the services. More information. The system might produce information that is insufficient, incomplete, or unable to support the company's changing information needs. So we need to be able to, for example, a system that tracks customer orders might not be capable of analyzing and predicting marketing trends. Similarly, better performance. We need to deliver things faster. Our phone lines are so busy that customers have to wait 30 minutes before they can speak to any representative. What can we do about this to make sure the customers can get to somebody in time? Can we invest in AI bots? Or can we redirect people earlier on to our web sources? Or can we answer their question through a chatbot or voice-activated AI, something of that nature, so that we do not have to invest as much in manpower? Improved service, more support for new products and services could also be one of the factors. Now, these factors that affect the system project, these could be internal or these could be external. Internal factors such as strategic plan, top managers coming forth, users are placing requests, IT department has issues, existing system and data has problems, it's old, company finances is driving the project. Or it could be external factors that your suppliers put in a demand, your customers put in a demand, government regulations are forcing you to do things. Competitors are doing something better, and if you don't act upon right now, you will lose the market share. Technology has gone much farther than where your company stands. The economy, the shift in economy. For example, during the COVID days, did you guys go out shopping, like grocery shopping and things like that? Is there anything did you notice different than pre-COVID and in COVID when you were going through the aisles in big stores?
I didn't go out. I don't have an immune system, so I stayed home.
Okay, let's see. Did any of you go out in those 2-3 years?
I mean, not much. It was mostly just to and from where I worked.
Okay. For example, even in 2000, okay, let's put it like this. Do you guys go out shopping now?
Yes.
Like grocery shopping, okay.
Yes.
Do you see any difference between 2019 and 2023?
People do shopping for others.
There has been a new market that's born. Yes, there are people out there shopping, not for themselves, but for somebody else, right? Businesses have come up with another model where they can deliver goods to your home, or they have created spots where you can come in and you click on the button in the app and they will come to your car and will drop that in your car, right? Those kind of business models are in place, which were non-existent in 2019. Rather, people wouldn't even pay for door dashing in 2019. And that is now part of our culture. You can't go out? Oh, why didn't you door dash it? Kind of a deal. So that's one thing. What else I noticed during the COVID years is, and even after, some companies whose products I used to get before COVID, they don't exist anymore. I can't find their products. Small companies are gone. Some companies have temporarily shut down, and some companies have reduced their operations. So let's say if they were producing 7 different kinds of Kringles, they were only producing 3 kinds. And how did they have to make that decision? They had to figure out which one of our Kringles are most favorite. And they would only produce those, and the prices went up. Because the quantity, the volume was not there. One other thing I noticed, the packaging changed. Let's say, for example, if Oreo was coming in like 4 different packaging styles, now Oreo was coming in 2 packaging styles. Either you buy a small box or you buy a massive box with several Oreo boxes in it. So because people were encouraged to only come out every other week, don't come out as frequently, so businesses shifted their packaging to adhere to those needs so that people can sort of kind of bulk buy, but not in as big volumes as you would buy at Costco, because they do not want to ruin their market at Costco. So they had to come up with some kind of an intermediate solution. These kind of business problems would have, of course, come in during the COVID years, and companies would have went around the economic cycle and had went around the government regulations, the customer demands. The suppliers were not providing things at the same level as they were before. You know, if I am putting together Oreo biscuit, I am not the holder of the entire supply chain. Somebody is supplying me with material that I am putting together to build my Oreo biscuits. And I need a supplier to give me something so that I can create cream. And if I have a downtime, if my machines go down, I need somebody to come and fix them. Right? And I need these truck drivers to deliver stuff to the distribution centers. And from there, I needed truck drivers to deliver to the stores. So all of this cycle was affected. And companies had to make decisions to keep themselves in business. So there were several factors affecting those business decisions that were getting made at that time. Internal factors, as we talked about, a company's strategic plan sets the overall direction for the firm. Significant resources are required to do these projects. So top management usually initiates the large-scale projects because then they have to come into action to allocate resources, allocate money, and users would send in requests based on the problems that they may be facing in their day-to-day operations. And information technology department itself could send in recommendations of what will work and what will not work. And then, of course, the steering committees will then make a decision what is feasible, and we'll just go with that. Because companies' finances is important, right? External factors, as we talked about, changes in technology. At one point in time, people only had barcodes. Now people went with, what is this?
QR code.
Oh,
QR code, right? What advantage does this has over barcode?
scan it with your phone, brings you right to where you're going.
Okay. Another advantage is barcode slightly ripped is unusable. This, on the other hand, can be read from different angles. Suppliers have come up with different ways of doing business. One of the common ways to exchange services is through an EDI, electronic data interchange, which sometimes could be bothersome if you are doing trade across continents. Customers use CRM one way or another, and that's how you get to be in touch with them, and they get to be in touch with you. And the customer information should seamlessly come into your business and help you make decisions. And customers want to be able to be connected to your business when they want to be connected to your business. So some of this process could be automated to help them deliver it. For example, I don't know if you guys have seen this stuff ever before. Amazon's robotics Kiva robots. So there's, as you can see in this picture, that there's a grid on the floor. These robots would take this and roam around the floor, and these robots will go and fetch this whole thing. And they have the data. So somebody will send out a signal that I need Post-it notes. So the robot closest to that will go and grab it and bring it to the fulfillment. And from there, the guy would just pick it up, drop it, and the robot will return back. That kind of stuff. And now they would have to continuously work on improving this as the number of products that they're selling grows. They have to efficiently manage this inventory growth. Then competitors are coming into market. The economy is shifting. The government is passing different regulations. All of these factors are there. So in most organizations, the IT department receives more systems requests than it can handle. Many organizations assign responsibilities for evaluating systems requests to a group of key managers and users. Usually they are in the form of a committee, and this committee will meet X number of times in a year to decide things. And this is the kind of a form I was talking about earlier, that a lot of the companies will push you that instead of sending in documents after documents, to fill out a form, and based on the preliminary information that you will provide, they will then decide whether to ask for the next set of information from you or not. So when the number of requests submitted through automated forms becomes significant, or if the requests can originate from internal sources as well as external, special purpose systems request tools can be used to help manage the workflow of a business. Okay. So, Systems Review Committee. Well, the Systems Review Committee has some good, sharp people who will go through whatever has been submitted and will go through that stuff, right? But the problem is they only meet X number of times in a year. And that's a problem, because that could delay everything until and unless there is an ad hoc meeting that's called. So whether one person or a committee is responsible, the goal is to evaluate the requests and set priorities. Suppose 4 requests may be reviewed. I want you to read these 4 requests. So let's say these are the 4 requests that came in. Now the steering committee's job would be to figure out which project should the firm pursue, what criteria should be applied, how should priorities be determined, and to answer those questions, the individuals or the committee must be able to assess the feasibility of each request. And how will they get to know that? We will talk about that later on in the chapter. For now, I will be putting you guys in breakout rooms, and you will be discussing the case in point 2.2, page 55. So let me bring about the breakout rooms. And we will give you guys 15 minutes to discuss. And when you come back, one person from each room can talk about what you guys discussed in your room. This is case in point 2.2, page number 55. And I'm opening your rooms now. Okay, guys. So what do you say? Case 2.2? Let's go with room number 1 first. Aiden, Alvin, Jonathan, and Victor.
All right. We thought, you need to review, a thorough review of both projects is needed from a cost analysis, what's the urgency, criticality, what's the stakeholders have to put into it, the alignment with the company, and a clear explanation of the decision-making process within the company. So we kind of have to get all sides of both projects before really settling down on a decision.
Okay, okay. Room number 2, Amruta, Arali, Devin, Ethan, and Jack.
I'd say that we came to a very similar conclusion that Alvin said. We agreed that we would need a cost analysis of both projects as well as how urgent both of them are. Because if the one for the federal reporting requirements, if that one isn't needed for another 8 to 12 months, depending on when those reports need to be submitted, then it's very possible that we could get one of the solutions out and then work on that one next. And then also looking at it from the perspective of what's best for the company. So in the case in point, it says in the VP is your boss. So I don't think that really holds any weight because we kind of want to make the decision that's best for the company and know where the company's headed and the goals and that. So
Makes sense. Okay. Room 3, Miguel, Nathan, and Zach.
So we took a more direct approach and assumed that a decision needed to be made. So for preparing, we wanted to just determine how expensive both of the processes will be, as well as finding out who these processes are going to benefit the most, like whether it's the customers from the marketing manager or the team from the VP. Then during the discussion, the questions we would ask are what is better long term? Are there any long-term costs in upgrading the system, and can upgrading the system be postponed?
And Daniel, Greg, and Ismail.
So we had pretty much the same exact thing. Get a cost estimate, a time estimate, also get an estimate on how much each of these systems would save the company. And then another thing is see how much of it overlaps with each other,
Okay.
because the accounting system is behind the scenes and the reservation system most likely connects directly to that. So maybe we could work on getting both at the same time.
Okay. Okay, so we learned earlier on strength, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. SWOT analysis. So what I want to do is let me go in the course shell and let's go under unit number 1. If you were already in unit number 1, you may have to refresh it for you to see this new link called SWOT examples. You click on this link and towards the bottom, you will find several examples of SWOT. What I will ask you to do next is I will put you guys in breakout rooms again, where you will divide these examples among your group members, that somebody will go through examples 1 through 4, another one will go through 5 through 8, and like that, and then read it and discuss it among yourselves as to what your example was and things of that nature. We will set aside 20 minutes for this activity. So this is a link that can be found under unit number 1. The link is called SWOT examples. Everybody is clear on what you got to do?
It's not showing up for me.
Yeah, it's also not showing up for me
Oh,
either.
you have to refresh it.
Yeah, I did.
Yeah,
It's
I've
still
been-
not working.
Still not working.
I'm getting fishbone.
Oh, you know what? Hold on a second. I need to enable it for you guys. I enabled it for the other class. Hold on a second. Okay, can you guys try now?
Okay, it's at
Yep,
the very
it's there.
bottom.
Okay, cool. Awesome. So let me open the rooms, and rather let me recreate the rooms. Okay, and then let's open all the rooms. That is section 2.7 that talks about assessing request feasibility. So as we looked at in the chapter number 1, that a systems analyst has to go through different kinds of feasibilities: operational feasibility, economic feasibility, technical feasibility. So even if the request is feasible, that does not mean that the request has to be fulfilled. It could be feasible, but it's not a priority. So in that case, it has to wait. So that's why it's very important for us to be working with some feasibility studies, which revolve around operational feasibilities, scheduling feasibility, technical, and economic. Operational feasibility more or less works around the area. Will it be easy to learn and use? Schedule, can we do it in a time? Technical, do we have the tech resources? And economic, will benefits exceed cost? So the amount of money I'm spending, will I get at least that much back? So is the proposal desirable in an operational sense? Is the proposal technically feasible? Is it economically desirable? Can the proposal be accomplished within an acceptable time frame? So several different questions that needs to be answered when we are doing feasibility analysis. Starting out with operational feasibility, which means that the proposed system will be used effectively after it has been developed. Operational feasibility is difficult to measure with precision, but must be studied very carefully. There are some questions that need to be answered when going through operational feasibility, and I will let you guys read through these 8 questions. Next, we will look at economic feasibility. And economic feasibility means that the project, the amount of money that you're spending in the project, what is the rate of return? How how quickly would you be able to start making profit? So that's why, you need to understand what is the total cost of ownership. Total cost of ownership is the amount of money that you're spending in the initial stage and the amount of money that you will be spending during the lifetime of the product. That's called the total cost of ownership. So for example, if you have purchased a refrigerator for yourself and then you buy a warranty on it, and then you pay taxes on it, and then you have the refrigerator for like 10 years, during which you had to maintain it for like 3 times, and each maintenance costs you around like $300, $400. So the $1,200 plus the cost of the refrigerator, plus the cost of the warranty, plus the taxes, everything collectively would be considered the total cost of ownership. When the product's life cycle ends, the total cost of ownership will be looked at like that. So what we need to look at is the total cost of ownership versus the benefit I'm driving from it. Does it really make sense? It's pretty much like if you are in any kind of a business and you want to spend money to get some software for the business, you want to weigh the total cost of ownership there as well. Also, an analyst must estimate the cost needed for people, because you need to staff people, hardware, equipment, software, formal and informal training, licensing and fees, consulting expenses, facility cost, which could be fixed or variable, and estimated cost of not developing the system or postponing the system or project, postponing the project. So all of these will be considered to be the questions that systems analyst needs to dive into to find the answers for. Now, there are two kinds of costs, tangible and intangible. Tangible costs are those costs that can be monitored in a dollar value. And intangible costs are those that can be considered, but you cannot measure them. They're not quantifiable. For example, the customers are dissatisfied. Can you quantify dissatisfaction? No. Our customers are satisfied. You cannot quantify satisfaction. When it says our customers are 100% satisfied, that means only those customers that you surveyed, the results came back 100%. That doesn't count for the customers that were never surveyed. So things of that nature that you have to keep in mind. So that similarly, there are tangible benefits, which can be measured in dollar amounts, and intangible, which cannot be measured. So for example, whatever things you did as a result of that, your customer satisfaction rate increased. So now you have a intangible benefit. So things of that nature are called that some things that you gain but can't be measured in tangible units. Similarly, you have technical feasibility, which refers to the technical resources needed to develop, purchase, install, or operate the system. And again, I will let you guys read through these 7 questions. Okay, so we will now move on to schedule feasibility. Schedule feasibility means that a project can be implemented in an acceptable time frame. When assessing schedule feasibility, a systems analyst must consider the interaction between time and costs. Some of the issues related to the schedule feasibility include: can the company or the IT team control the factors that affect schedule feasibility? Has management established a firm timetable for the project? What conditions must be satisfied during the development of the system? Will an accelerated schedule pose any risks? Will project management techniques be available to coordinate and control the project? And will a project manager be even appointed? So Chapter 3 describes various tools and techniques when it comes to project management. Moving to Section 2.8, Priorities. After rejecting systems requests that are not feasible, the Systems Review Committee must establish priorities for the remaining items. If tools are used as part of the review process, the request may already be in a partially or fully sorted order. The highest priority goes to the project requests that provide the greatest benefit. And that's how the businesses run and do things. Now comes dynamic priorities. Dynamic priorities, it's important to note that projects that have adopted an agile approach, in that, as we saw last week, you build your storyline. In your storyline, you have smaller components that put together to make a story. And you don't have one story, you have several storylines. By each story, you mean a component of the project that must be completed. Once you complete one storyline and deliver it, business comes back to you and says, your client comes back to you and says, you know what, our priorities have shifted. So how about if we revisit the storylines in the pipeline and shuffle things around? So dynamic priorities are pretty much talking about that idea that you can shuffle things around and create new storyboards for the next releases. So you're not locked into any priority that way. That's why some companies who deal with that kind of situation prefer to deal with an agile approach than a waterfall approach. Factors that affect the priority. Will the proposed system reduce cost? Will the system increase revenue? Will the system project result in more information or produce better results? Will the system serve customers better? Will the system serve the organization better? And can the project be implemented in a reasonable time frame? And are the necessary financial, human, and technical resources available? Because again, if the project is massive, that means you would have to allocate resources for that project for a longer period of time. Then what would happen to those projects where these resources are being shared or being taken away from? So all of these factors, project manager has to keep in mind when making these decisions. Then comes the discretionary and non-discretionary projects. Discretionary projects are those projects where you have a choice. And non-discretionary projects are those where you do not have a choice. For example, if a government regulation comes in place that all companies have to adhere to these policies, that's non-discretionary. You have to do that. On the contrary, the discretionary projects would be those that you have a choice that we want to upgrade our system, we want to make these changes or not, or other projects in the pipeline of a higher priority, or it may yield higher profits. Those are considered to be your discretionary projects versus non-discretionary projects, okay? Then comes the preliminary investigation. A systems analyst conducts a preliminary investigation to study the system requests and recommend specific action. We will deal with this and some other documentation related to this, but let's first take a break till 7:35. So I'll see you guys at 7:35 and then we will continue from here.
Heyo.
And let's continue from where we last left off. And we were getting into the preliminary investigation, which is to study the system request and write out the recommendation, which will be presented to some kind of a committee. So the end product of the preliminary investigation will be a report that will go out to the management. What will you be reporting to the management? You will be reporting in this problems or opportunities, benefits, costs, project scope, and constraints. And all of these will be driven through fact finding. Planning the preliminary investigation. Before you start working on the preliminary investigation, you already must know the stakeholders involved in this so that you can get to the right people and get the right information from them. When interacting with these people, use the word problem carefully because it has negative connotation to it, and some people may get stressed out about it. Some people may think that this solution will be a threat to their position. So that's why you got to, when you are taking interview, asking question, getting to know more about the problem, carefully use the word problem. Maybe use it as a word opportunity rather than a problem to give it a positive meaning. You need to define the project scope and constraint as a systems analyst. You need to perform fact finding, in which you need to understand the organization chart, because if you do not understand the organization chart, you won't be able to approach the right set of people, because you need to talk to people in different walks of life within the organization. Then you need to be able to review the documentation that you produce. You need to maybe go up to the different places and observe them while they are working and conduct surveys to collect additional information from user, knowing the fact that survey results are very low percentage of them actually come back. Then you study the usability of the product, the cost, the benefit, and schedule data. Then you need to evaluate the feasibilities, which includes the operational, technical, economic, and schedule. So all of these will be part of your preliminary investigation. In the due process of understanding the problem or opportunity, that's where the fishbone diagram comes into play. That you guys already saw that there's a folder of fishbone diagram located under unit number 1. What exactly does a fishbone diagram do? Fishbone diagram is an analysis tool that represents the possible causes of problem, and you lay them out in a graphical outline that looks like a fish bone. For example, if you're looking at figure 215, some of the problems have been identified tied to a main problem of low morale. That's the main problem. Low morale is the main problem. So you may be looking at people, environment, management, and machine. These are the 4 important components that you can, these are 4 important areas to investigate. And then you came to the conclusion that people have low morale because they don't have enough training. Environment is contributing to the low morale because the temperature is not controlled properly. Similarly, management is contributing to low morale because there are too many meetings and that keeps them away from managing effectively. Machines are a contributing factor to low morale because they need so much maintenance and they're getting obsolete over the period of time. So that's a fishbone analysis. Then you define the project scope and constraints, and this is where I told you earlier that you have to keep yourself away from getting into project creep or scope creep. You have to earlier on limit your project. And this is an extremely important point for your presentations, because some of you are starting to present starting next week. So you need to define the scope of your presentation and then live up to that scope and make sure that scope is deliverable within 5 to 7 minutes. So your presentation can also be treated by you as your small project that you're trying to accomplish, and you have to limit yourself within the parameters given to you. Okay, so when you are looking at these, you have to consider that there are internal problems and there are external problems. Okay, now sometimes the problems, internal or external, may be related to present, may be related to future. So here the author of the book has given us an analysis where present and external factor like IRS coming into play, IRS being an external entity. Whereas external future may be sometimes next year, our largest customer will require a security code for all online transactions. It's an external future factor. There may be an internal present factor like starting next week, the marketing system must track all repeat visits. Or the management prefers that the project be completed now rather than next quarter. So there can be, like the triangle is desirable and exclamation is mandatory. Similarly, the future internal could be to reduce raw material costs. We should build supply chain management capability into the next version of our purchasing system. So all of these are considered to be different elements of your scope. Perform fact finding. Fact finding involves several techniques. Again, future chapters will talk more about it, but this could include investigating the current system. This could include investigating the current documentation, current people using the system, and so on and so forth. Analyze organizational chart so that you know who is working for who reports to who, so that you understand when you are going through the department which has reported the problem, you should be able to go and interview the right people. You can conduct interviews for which you need to determine the people to interview. Of course, for that, you need to know organization chart. You need to establish objective for the interview, develop interview questions, prepare for the interview, conduct the interview, document the interview, evaluate the interview. All of these things need to be considered. And again, this is just brief stuff. Future chapters will talk about these elements in a little bit more detail. As there's a reference you can see. Chapter 4 goes about these 7 steps in detail. Then you may have to go into the facility and maybe perform an observation, how employees are doing their day-to-day job. Maybe build a survey and conduct a survey so that people can tell you anonymously or named, whatever is the case, what the real problems are based on the questions that you have carefully drafted. Now, in the future chapters, you will also learn do's and don'ts of creating survey. Analyzing the data. Well, when you're analyzing the data, the Pareto chart is one of the ways to analyze data. As you can see in this chart, you're going from high to low, high priority to low priority. So that's the Pareto chart. It just goes in order. It's a vertical bar, the bar which represents various causes and problems, but is arranged in a descending order so the team can focus on the most important causes first. Then you also have another approach called XY chart or scatter chart, where you can simply dot the points on the chart and see the pattern as to how things are going. Moving to the step number 4, where you analyze project usability, cost, benefit, and schedule data. During fact-finding, data is gathered about the project's predicted cost, anticipated benefits, and schedule issues that could affect implementation. If interviews were conducted or surveys used, the data should be tabulated to make it easier to understand. Sometimes you have to take the data that you have gathered from the survey, bring it to an Excel sheet or like documents, and then convert those into visual charts. Like, for example, the project that I did last year for my leadership program at Gateway, that's exactly what we did. We had the survey results returned back to us from SurveyMonkey, and then we translated them into an Excel spreadsheet. And then from there, we created different charts. And then we were able to talk about those charts in our presentation as to what these charts actually mean and what were the questions, what data did we collected, and what these charts actually mean. Similarly, I want you to read these 4 questions before I move on to evaluate feasibility. These 4 questions related to analyze project usability, cost, benefit, and schedule data. So these 4 bullet points. Next, evaluate feasibility. At this point, the problem or opportunity has been analyzed, the project scope and constraints have been defined, and fact-finding has been performed to evaluate project usability, costs, benefits, and time constraints. The next step is to assess the project's feasibility, beginning with reviewing the answers to the questions that are listed in section 2.7, and then we will be following the guidelines. Operational feasibility, where fact-finding should have included a review of users' needs, requirements, and expectations. Economic feasibility, using the fact-finding data financial analysis tool can be applied to assess feasibility. Technical feasibility, where the fact-finding data should identify the hardware, software, and network resources. And schedule feasibility, the fact-finding data should include stakeholders' expectations regarding acceptable timing and completion dates. So there are different kinds of feasibilities, the 4 different kinds of feasibilities: operational, economic, technical, and schedule. All 4 of these feasibilities are part of your evaluation. Next, moving to summarizing what you have gathered. So when you are about to summarize what you have gathered, you have to write a document which goes like this. You need to have an introduction of the document, which is the very first section of your report. This introduction includes a brief description of the system, the name of the people or the group of the people that performed the investigation, and the name of the person or group who initiated the investigation, followed by the system request summary, followed by your findings, followed by your recommendations, followed by your project roles, time and cost estimates, expected benefits, and end the report with appendix. So that's how your preliminary investigation will look like in a report form. Now, going back to your Blackboard course shell and going back to unit number 1, I want you to open the fishbone diagram examples, and I want you to look at these 5 examples that I have made available for you. So I will touch base with you in 10 minutes. I'll give you this time to overlook these 5 fishbone diagrams and see what each one of them means and what kind of problem it is trying to identify. So come out of the fishbone diagram folder and go back to the Unit 1 folder, and this time open preliminary investigation samples. Okay, now this is a bit time consuming because it's pretty detailed. All I want you to do is just skim through these examples, just set aside, let's set aside 10 minutes. I'll come back to you at 8:05, skim through these documents just to get an idea of how preliminary investigation documents can be put together. There are different examples showing you different ways of doing them. To ask all of you to go to page in the book, I'll tell you just a minute. Okay. That will be page number 60. And there is a case in point. Case in point 2.3. So that is right where you see the discretionary and non-discretionary projects. It's right below that. Case in point 2.3. I've created 5 different teams. Each team has 3 members to discuss this case. So you may not get the same people that you discuss the part 1 of this case. One of the reasons is because each room had its own discussion. And of course, your discussion might be slightly different from the discussion in the other room. So creating a little mix would allow you to share some of the ideas that you learn about in the other groups. So you're in your breakout room for 15 minutes, and let's hear from you when you come back. join back. So Devin and Jonathan. Probably within the next 10 seconds, they will also be able to join. And it looks like everybody's here. Let's start with room number 1. Ethan, Jack, and Nathan. What is your group's take on it?
Our take was that since the severity of the problem for the accounting system, it went up to a non-discretionary project that I think we kind of just value that one first in the priority list. I guess issues that need to be discussed or something that needs to be discussed would probably be the timeline and communicate with the marketing manager of when a good time would be to start on her solution, or kind of give her the outline of how long it'll take to get this one done.
Okay. Room number 2, Aiden, Daniel, and Greg.
We just talked about how, like, if it's such a massive priority, like if it's a big federal thing and it's non-discretionary, then it's just a matter of what is the time constraint that we have here, like how fast does this need to get done and how possible is that to get done. Greg also had his own opinions. We did have a little discourse, but it was all good.
Yeah, I brought up that it says certain types of company paid health insurance premiums. So we need to figure out the scope of that. Because if it is only a small scope, we could possibly, instead of using this entire time to create the new accounting system, is it more feasible to have some people go through and just quickly make up those reports? If
Okay.
it's a big part of the project, or like it's a large part of the corporation, then yes, we need to make it completely non-discretionary. But I mean, can we also just make small modifications to get that information ready for us?
Okay. It's good to have different viewpoint on the subject matter. That's fine. As long as it's done professionally. Room number 3, Ismail, Miguel, and Victor.
Yeah, so we kind of had the same train of thought. One of the issues that we discussed, or that would need to be discussed, would be the timeline on the government requirements of the insurance reporting. So we would pretty much determine that. I guess that would determine whether this is a non-discretionary project. If it can be pushed back later, then the marketing manager would keep the upgrade before the VP.
Okay. Alvin, Devin, and Jonathan.
All right, so similar to what they've already discussed, definitely look into what the federal requirements are for reporting to health insurance premiums, what data they're going to need, and then start developing a framework for building that and prioritizing what tasks need to be done. And then we can work on a plan of action that will take the marketing manager's worries into consideration, and kind of build a project for them based on that, but prioritizing the federal regulations, since I know those you have to get them done. So regardless, the marketing kind of takes second place, but you don't tell them that. You tell them that nicely. I've been in that boat, so I know what that's like.
Okay. Last room, Amruta, Arali, and Zach.
Since the VP is the boss and he said it's non-discretionary, we agreed that we must work on it. And an issue that would be discussed is that since we're being forced to focus on the system without exploring other options, it causes people to be upset, aka the marketing manager. So we need to work better on communication and time management.
Okay, okay. So is it more fun to have discussions in small group or large groups?
Large groups, we get different opinions.
Okay. Going to be noted. So we
Yeah.
will pick large groups for you guys. Okay. And
Oh.
we will give you a question of ethics to look at next. So if you go down towards the end of section 10.9.3, which should be page number 69. Where's my Zoom? Okay, so on page number 69, where we looked at summarizing the preliminary investigation, right towards the bottom, there is a question of ethics. So what I'll do is I will create a bit of a large rooms this time with more people in each room. There'll be like 7 people in each room, and we're gonna give you guys 20 minutes for the ethics discussion. Okay? Hopefully you guys can manage a large group. Everybody should get a chance to raise an opinion or voice their opinion. So there you go.
Because it's yeah, it's your career on the line, so you want to make sure that you're not drowning yourself, or if things become too unbearable, you want to make sure you can head out of there and go somewhere else where it's maybe not as toxic.
Okay.
It's tough
And,
on the ethics.
and don't step down.
Mhm.
Because stepping down would just allow if it's unethical, this to just go through a lot more easily. You can be that cornerstone of making sure everything is ethical that goes through,
Okay.
no matter how it damages your prospects.
Interesting. So so that's basically the gist of your conversation between the two of you, what you just stated.
Oh yeah.
Okay. Okay. Let's move on to room number 2. Aiden, Amruta, Devin, Jack, Jonathan, Miguel, and Zach.
We basically said that it's definitely an ethics thing that we're talking about here. It's an ethical question, and we would consider just confronting the two first and tell them what our decisions would be if they didn't stop, if they kept kind of just backing each other up on decision making and rejecting their opinions and whatnot. So we would confront them, and then we'd say we'd take it into upper management's hands if it pursued.
Okay. Okay. Makes sense. So as long as you guys had healthy discussion and you had points to discuss and things to raise, and that's basically, it's just one of those activities where you get a chance to talk about things. So before we wrap up, I want to once again emphasize that inside the unit 1, you have 2 assignments and 2 quizzes. Both of these items are due by next week, Friday, midnight. So next week, Friday, which would be,
I think you got to bump up the dates on the quiz.
on the quiz number 2.
I think it was on. Yeah, okay, there you go. I tried to do one of them, and it came up with
This is second. Okay, so hold on a second. Let me double check. So
it
this
showed up as
is
late.
second, and let me look at the first quiz here.
I think I did quiz 3. I'm sorry.
Oh, okay.
Aren't we
Don't
in
go
week 2?
ahead.
Now we're in week 2.
No, as I said, each week we are going with, I mean, like, follow the syllabus.
Oh, Saad, your syllabus, man. I should have did that. My bad.
Yeah,
Me jumping
We-
ahead.
yeah. So this is week 2, so we are in chapter number 2. Anyway, so that's one thing. And then next week, we will start our presentations. So as I was talking about earlier, the presentation number 1, 5 to 7 minutes. The Excel sheet tells you who will be going as to be the first 3 people and which 2 people are on standby. So 5 people will prepare, 3 will go, and 2 probably may or may not go depending on other factors. So that's basically under the presentation number 1, information under presentations. Okay, so that brings us to the end of our